Hi Shubham, hi team, hi everybody. Can you hear me? Can anybody give me a confirmation from the chat? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I am just sharing my screen. So let us start. Yes. Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to this webinar, which will be architecting for multi-cloud with AWS and Beyond. So, myself, Pooja Koski, I am working at PwC with emerging technologies and cutting edge innovations. So, I'm very much thrilled to be the host for this session today. As an yes, I think Shubham, can you give me a heads up that if you can able to see my screen so that I can just start? Yes, sure. Yes, I have my video is also visible. Yeah, let us start. I have been presenting my screen as well. Yes. So, yeah. So, today we'll be talking about the multi cloud, which will be AWS, Azure, and GCP, how we are using in our day to day operations. So, as an experienced senior associate, I have had a privilege of helping organization to design and implement a robust and scalable solutions across multiple cloud environments, which includes AWS, Azure, and GCP, and beyond. So, in today's dynamic digital landscape, it is very much important that multiple cloud environments can be used in all the organizations for digital landscape, leveraging the strengths of multi-cloud platforms. So let us start. So what I'm going to cover today will be uh, so my introduction has been completed, and next thing will be let us understand what is multi-cloud architecture and multi-cloud architecture design principles, what we need to have one architecture with multiple cloud. And next will be deploying multi-cloud applications, so how we are going to deploy any one simple applications on multiple clouds. And next will be challenges what we are facing with multi-cloud adoption. And next will be to avoid challenges, let us have best practices for multiple cloud adoption. And next will be a discussion and a QA session. If you have any doubts or any questions, let us discuss. And lastly, we'll discuss once again what we have been discussed so far, and then what are the key points we are taking away. So let us start. What is multiple cloud architecture in your understanding? Like, what does multi-cloud means? So here, multi-cloud refers to using multiple cloud providers in our architecture on our everyday projects, like which includes AWS, Azure, and GCP, or any other cloud platforms which can be look into. So why we have multiple cloud providers in a individual project? So it will enhance redundancy, flexibility, and cost efficiency. How we will look into now. So also multiple cloud platform, what it will do is it will prevent dependency on one individual cloud provider, and also it will make sure that there is a seamless operations across different platforms. So there is a difference between multiple cloud and hybrid cloud. So what is multi-cloud and hybrid cloud? So there is an infrastructure what we have created earlier before we move into a complete cloud architecture was hybrid cloud. What it was? So hybrid cloud usually have a on-premise infrastructure which again connects with any one cloud provider, like either it could be private or public. But here in the multi-cloud environment, what we will do is we will completely work with different cloud platforms. It can be AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So we will have a communication and a connection between all these cloud providers. Whatever we are going to adopt into our architecture, we will have only working with cloud providers. There won't be any on-premise infrastructure here. So this is the difference between infrastructure between both multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. Next will be purpose. What is the purpose of using hybrid cloud and multi-cloud? So when we go for multi-cloud, it optimizes performance, cost, redundancy across cloud providers. So what is optimizes performance? So performance will be always taken care. So whenever we go for any cloud provider, so they will by default we will get all the services has been provided in the same cloud provider. So we will not be able to make any, or we will not be able to make any other changes or worry about the performance what we have deployed onto, like all our applications can be seamlessly performed well. And the cost, so we don't have to utilize all the services provided by multiple cloud providers. So it can be either AWS, Azure, or GCP. So there we will have a freedom choose which services we are going to use and which cannot be used, and we can just shut down and then reduce the cost. So we are very much having a flexibility to reduce our cost by just using our services what is needed. Redundancy and everything will be maintained across all the cloud providers what we are going to adopt in our architecture. But in the hybrid cloud, what is the issue here? It will be like it balances security, flexibility, and compliance by providing integrity. I mean, it will not integrate only on cloud providers. It will be having a integration between cloud platform as well as the on-premise platform. So but it can have a better security on our data, and our all applications can be on cloud. So this is a purpose for between both of these architecture. But let us look at the vendor dependency. So here, when we go for multi-cloud approach, we can avoid vendor lock-in by distributing workloads across multiple providers. So there won't be any one individual provider what we are working with, and we have to lock in with only one this vendor, and we have to just keep working with that cloud provider only. We will have a flexibility and then freedom to distribute our work across different cloud providers. But in the hybrid cloud, we often have to rely on single cloud provider along on-premise resources. So here we don't have a freedom to just change our cloud provider, because we have to again work with the migration, and everything will be a big task since we have on-premise resource as well. And the next use case example for both multi-cloud and the hybrid cloud. So here what we have been taking one, yeah, here what we have been taking as a example for both multi-cloud and a hybrid cloud will be any company can use AWS for AI workloads and GCP for data analytics. It can be either AWS and Azure, or GCP and Azure, or AWS and GCP, so that we can distribute. AI workloads can be done on AWS, and the data analytics part can be on GCP or Azure. So this can be a real use case example for multi-cloud. And when we go for hybrid cloud, it can be there is a banking application what we are working with, but the data which will be a sensitive data can be on premise, while the application which customer can directly log into or use, which will be a customer facing applications, can be on the public cloud. So this can be examples, like a real use case examples for both of the approaches. Now, this multi-cloud will have benefits like over hybrid cloud. What are the benefits we are getting by using multi-cloud instead of hybrid cloud? So this will not have any vendor lock-in, like we don't have to just depend on one single provider. We can always, one provider is down, other provider can take up our applications and make it available all the time. And the next will be, it can regulate compliance and the data residency. It can distribute data across multiple regions to meet our legal requirements. Like there will be some of the restrictions while working with any providers, or it is on-prem or any cloud provider. So to avoid all the restrictions, everything, we can move our data across multiple regions to always have a backup and a disaster recovery, and everything can be very seamless. The next will be cost optimization. As I have mentioned earlier, we always need to reduce our cost. So when we go for on premises, we have to always look into our data from, like we have to pay for the whole. But here, when we go for any cloud providers, it will be a cost effective. We can choose which services and from which cloud provider we are going to use. So we are always free to utilize individual or any specific services from this cloud provider, and we can always reduce the cost. So the next part will be a real world use case example, which is using multi-cloud architecture. So if you have any of the applications or any web applications or mobile applications, so if you continuously use those applications, so you must be thinking what is happening behind. So how it is always uh, being up, like when you go for any example, Netflix. So the Netflix is always being used by, I think, almost everybody and all the time. So how it is being used, like how it is always up and no latency or no issues, or there is never Netflix being a down or anything, right? So when you go and watch any web series and movie, there won't be downtime. So how it is happening, how Netflix has made their architecture so far. So Netflix adopted multi-cloud approach by using AWS for global content delivery and Azure for internal business operations. So as you can see, when I mentioned both AWS and Azure is used in Netflix, so but they have made sure that what is global content delivery at AWS side and the internal business operations on Azure side. So what it is giving for us, it is always giving us a resilience, scalability, and disaster recovery. So there won't be a downtime at Netflix so far, and if it is there, it is very much easy to work on the issues and then make Netflix up. It will ensure that there is uninterrupted service even one provider experiences downtime. So there won't be any there won't be any interruption while making sure that we have multi-cloud providers here. So if one provider experiences any downtime, so the other provider can take up and then make sure the application is up. So this is very much about Netflix. By just you can just Google about Netflix multi-cloud architecture, and you will be able to see how the architecture has been made at the back end, and then you will understand what is the importance of adopting multi-cloud architecture at our projects or our companies or anywhere wherever we work with on-prem, how we can just move to multi-cloud architecture. So this will be a great example. You can all just go through the websites and then just look into the backend architecture, how they have been maintained so far. And next will be, so now we have considered that in our projects we have only hybrid cloud architecture, how we have to, or how we can move to multi-cloud architecture. So we have to keep few of the things at our mind. So any organizations which wants to adopt multi-cloud strategies, designing a robust architecture is crucial to ensure seamless communication and performance across cloud providers. So how? So as a company or as an organization, now I want to adopt multi-cloud strategies in my project, and I want to change the entire architecture to multi-cloud. So, what all the key points I have to keep in mind and then start. So, the first will be interoperability. What is it? So now I have AWS and Azure have been brought into my architecture, but I have to make sure that all the services from these cloud providers are able to communicate and function together efficiently. So I have to make sure that the services are able to communicate, or these both cloud providers are able to work together, like all the services inside them are functioning together efficiently. So this is a main key point I have to look into. Next will be where it is hybrid cloud or multi-cloud or any individual cloud architecture, we have to have a applications, backend and everything has to be prepared at infrastructure level. So any organization must use APIs, Kubernetes and containerization to create a cloud agnostic applications, so which can be deployed on multi-cloud. So this is the next key point we have to keep in mind. So for example, we have Terraform and Kubernetes to deploy all our workloads across multi-cloud to work at, to get a seamless operations. So when you talk about Terraform is something we can automate on any cloud platforms. Like any cloud platforms are now able to automate through Terraform. So this is one of the key point we can keep in mind. This will be a plus point going to work with multi-cloud architecture. And Kubernetes clusters can be deployed on any cloud providers nowadays. Like it will be a very useful and a easiest way to deploy our applications. The next will be security and identity management. Yes, hybrid cloud has a most robust way to have a security at data level when it is on premises, but still cloud providers also are providing best security practices, which will be a single sign on and a multi-factor authentication for user access, and that will be are back. Like, you will decide who will be able to, or who can look come into our architecture, who can log into our cloud provider and then access, and you will be able to restrict the access to the cloud platform. So there will be, as you can see, cloud access security brokers to monitor security policies. So this is all a given benefit by just moving to cloud architecture. So we can encrypt data at rest and in transit using cloud native encryption service. Like there is AWS KMS, Google Cloud Platform Cloud KMS, and this is all has been already provided in any cloud platform we can go to. So the next key point to look into will be database. So data management and storage is a very much important nowadays, where we are maintaining any organization's data or any company's data. So how we can manage? So multi-cloud databases are available in AWS, Azure or GCP or any other cloud platform. So for example, that is AWS RDS and GCP Cloud SQL and Azure SQL too. So here we can have a data across all the multi-cloud, all the cloud providers. What we have now, I have AWS and Azure at my architecture level, at my organization level. So I can keep data at both AWS and Azure, and I can make sure that both data is mirroring across both cloud providers, and I can make sure that it is all up to date, and I can select which can be up and which can be down, and I will be able to make sure data is not at all lost or data is not being uh, destroyed at any point of time but mistakenly, so that I'll have a restricted access to my data at both of the cloud providers. So hybrid data lakes. So integrating Snowflake or a BigQuery to analyze data from multiple clouds is a plus point. It can like this is the point where we have to remember that all the cloud providers are able to work with any open source tools for integrating anything, like any automation can be integrated for all with all the cloud providers. Next, and the key point can be considered with networking and connectivity. So there is a efficient networking is essential to minimize latency and enable smooth data transfer between cloud providers. So yes, so networking is very much important with everyday day-to-day activities what we work with our applications data or anything. So data transfer is a big headache for everybody who I work with on premises. So but with the cloud providers, so it will be very much essential that networking is taken care by cloud providers, so we don't have to worry much and we will be able to know what is the networking and then connectivity here for this cloud provider. We have to just learn on that part and then it will be very much easy to make sure that there is a efficient networking is available for data transfer between the cloud providers what we are maintaining in our organization. The next key point, there is these gateways are like for networking and connectivity at three cloud providers, that will be AWS and Azure and cloud Google Cloud. So these three cloud providers are giving us these networking concepts or a networking services which we can work with to make sure that there is efficient networking at our at our architecture level. So you can just go ahead and then learn about AWS Transit Gateway or Azure Express Route and Google Cloud Interconnect. So this can be learned and to make sure that we have a better connectivity at our architecture level. So there is a real world use case that will be Spotify for multiple cloud approach. So you all have been using the Spotify, right? So that why there is no downtime at all. So like you can be able to download or listen to the music or anything. So there is a it has a multi cloud strategies with AI or ML workloads and a data processing. So I think you will be able to look into their official website and then know how they have been designed their architecture with AI driven recommendation algorithms, and they have a huge data analytics which I would recommend all you to just look into that official website so that you will understand more in detail about their approach, how they have implemented multi-cloud in their architecture. And there will be AWS has been used by Spotify for the data storage. So obviously Spotify will have every music possible of all the languages across the globe. So definitely they have a huge data to be stored. So how they are maintaining is using AWS. So when you go for a AI or ML workloads that has been hosted on GCP, and AWS has been maintained for data storage and data processing and for all the backend services with respect to data. Now let us just come to the challenges what we are facing in multi-cloud. So it is not like when we talk about multi-cloud have a lot of advantages to look into. There are a few challenges also. What are the challenges? Just let us see what are the challenges we have. So there is a complexity in management. Definitely, there is a complexity in managing all the cloud platforms. So since we are going to adopt multi-cloud platforms in our projects or in our architecture, there will be a lot of tools and then interfaces we have to look into or we have to learn and then adopt those cloud platforms. So we have to make sure that we know AWS, Azure and GCP if we want to adopt all the three cloud platform in our architecture. So it is always recommended to know these by I mean from the scratch what all the services are in each of these cloud providers and then know how their functionality is. So that way it will be very much easy to have it adopted in our architecture. Next will be security. So, managing security across multiple providers are little riskier, but still, with the best practices, we can make sure that we have a better security across all the multiple cloud providers. What we are gonna adopt to into our architecture. The next will be data transfer cost. Yes, so there is a example I would like to give. If there is a data hosted on AWS and we want to migrate to Azure, so there will be a data transfer cost. Definitely, let us again look into the best practices to follow to avoid these challenges. There will be a compliance and a governance, so there is a standards or restrictions that we have to meet to make sure to utilize all the cloud providers in our architecture. So yes, we can do that. We will always have a option to meet industry standards to adopt these cloud providers into our architecture. So but let us look at the best practices to avoid these challenges and then make sure that we will always have a good architecture for our projects. So, the first key point as a best practice to adopt multi cloud approach will be use multi cloud management tools. So, yes, so there is a tools available as if like I have mentioned only Kubernetes, Terraform, and HashiCorp Vault. So there are multiple tools available which can be utilized with multi-cloud, and like Kubernetes can be work with AWS, Azure, or GCP or any other cloud platforms in the same way Terraform and the HashiCorp Vault. So let us make sure that we are using these all open source tool with our cloud platforms to make sure that we don't get into any troubles with any challenges or anything to avoid these things. The next will be let us implement centralized identity management to avoid the security issues or security risk. To avoid that challenge, we have to always have a centralized identity management, which will be AWS IAM, Azure AD, or GCP level. There is again a security service available, or any other cloud platforms we do have respective security services available. So when we make sure that we have a centralized identity management, so there will be a reduced challenge with respect to adopting these cloud approaches. And the next will be monitor and optimized cost across cloud. So when we have financial operation strategies adopted in our architecture, we can always monitor and then have just monitor what are the services you are using across these multiple cloud platforms at your architecture. So when you monitor and then get to know what are the services are being used and what is not required, or how to avoid unnecessary usage of any services, then when we do this kind of optimization and a monitor at architecture level, we can always reduce the cost and then make sure that we are not uh, you know utilizing more than our need and then wasting our money in terms of the cost. So it is always recommended to have a financial operation strategies to monitor and then optimized cost across these cloud platforms. There's next will be adopt a cloud agnostic approach. What is this? So when I said that when we use open source tools for portability with any cloud platforms will be always a best practice to make sure that we are not just using cloud providers and we are making huge cost to the organization. Instead of that, we can always go with the open source tools. For example, Kubernetes is the best open source tool for our hosting our application, which again can be hosted on cloud. So this way we can reduce any challenges when we want to adopt multi-cloud approach in our architecture. So the next one will be Airbnb is a multi-cloud use case, our best real world use case example, because the company has I know when it was launched a year after, the company has decided to migrate all of its cloud computing functions to AWS because of the there are the services challenges were experienced with the previous cloud provider. So when it had the all those issues with the earlier provider, so it decided to move to AWS completely. But how it is working with now, like how it has designed its architecture now, let us look at to that. So yes. So they have benefits after moving to AWS. What are those? So they have enhanced their resilience, and cost has been reduced, and flexibility and scalability. Yes. So when we talk about resilience, it has distributed its workloads across AWS and GCP to reduce the risk of any service disruption. There won't be any interruption between the services has been hosted on AWS or GCP. This is how they have made sure there is a enhanced resilience. And the next one will be cost optimization. So they have utilized the complete both of the cloud providers to manage their operations cost effectively. There is certain practices we have to maintain. Like earlier, as I mentioned, we have to monitor all our services. I mean, in a real world, like when we have Airbnb application hosted on AWS, we have to make sure that we are monitoring the services utilization as well to make sure that the cost is not going beyond. So that is how they made sure on both AWS and GCP has been underutilizing the services and then reducing the cost also effectively. There is a flexibility and a scalability. When you go for a multi-cloud strategy, which enables dynamic scaling of resources to meet fluctuating user demand. So there will be a huge user demand. Like whenever we have any small application also, we will have user demand. So based on the user demand, it can work with and to make sure there is a flexibility to make any kind of a modifications with respect to scaling any resources to meet the users demands. So this is a best use case which I will be recommending everybody here to just look into the official website how the Airbnb has set up their architecture to make sure they have used multiple cloud providers to avoid any challenges or to make sure they are achieving all these benefits: resilience, cost optimization, and flexibility and scalability. And what is the trends in multi-cloud now? So multi-cloud as in like it is having AI, ML, and what are the new things are coming into our market nowadays. So by adopting multi-cloud, we can achieve AI and automation in multi-cloud management. So when I mention AI, so there are many AI services available in all these multiple cloud providers, and there can be automation done on these multiple cloud providers. For example, there are few of the services provided by AWS. For example, if I take, so there are AI services like AI resources we can work on directly on cloud providers like cloud platform. And automation, when I mention, there is multiple approaches we can go with when we have a AWS and an Azure cloud providers in my architecture. Here what I can do is I can use Terraform, or directly on the cloud there is a services available on AWS and Azure directly to automate any of the task or any of the operations directly on cloud, or using Terraform to automate any of the resources or anything in terms of operations I can automate. And this is how, like this has been a biggest I know biggest advantage of adopting onto multi-cloud approach. So next will be serverless multi-cloud. So there will be no interruption, or there won't be a downtime, or there won't be anything. So there will be a serverless multi-cloud also can be adopted with this approach. Next one will be edge computing and multi-cloud. So it won't be just having a resources on my cloud platform and then I'm just making my application up. It will be edge computing as well. So I'm really sorry. I think Hi everybody. I'm really sorry. I think I couldn't see your messages and I didn't get notification. Uh, Let me share again, please. Are you able to see my screen now? Can any one of you just yes, yeah. I will try to. So from where you couldn't see the slides, can you just mention me? I can just again start from there. Okay, fine. Let us see from there. Yes, I'm really sorry I couldn't have this notifications on my feed. Mm, Let me know if you can see the next slide now. Yes. Okay, so I was talking about understanding multi-cloud architecture. So what is multi-cloud architecture? It refers to using all the all the cloud providers, for example AWS, Azure, GCP, or any other cloud providers available in the market to enhance redundancy, flexibility, and cost efficiency, so which will also make um applications operate seamlessly across different platforms. So here what we are doing is we will be working with for example AWS and Azure. So what it can do is, like, I have my applications hosted on AWS, and then the data database has been hosted on Azure. So it can work, I mean both AWS and Azure can work together to make sure that there is a seamless operations across these two platforms, and it will also prevents dependency. And also next slide will be, just interrupt me if you can, if you can't see any screen, just unmute and then speak, please. Yeah. Oh, yes. So the next will be, what is the difference between multi-cloud and hybrid cloud? So this is very much important to understand the difference between hybrid cloud and multi-cloud before we adopt into multi-cloud architecture. So multi-cloud, as in, like, there is cloud providers available in the market which are like in high demand, which will be AWS, Azure, and the Google Cloud. So we will have our services, like we will utilize the services provided by these providers, and then make sure that we are distributing our workloads across these multiple cloud platforms. Hybrid cloud will be having the on-premise infrastructure can be connected with public cloud or a private cloud. So this is the infrastructure composition I have just shown. And then what is the purpose of using multi-cloud will be optimizing performance, cost, and redundancy across cloud providers. But hybrid cloud will be having it balances the security, flexibility, and the compliance by integrating private and public clouds. So this way we have we can make sure that, in the hybrid cloud architecture, what will be there. So there is a data which can be hosted on prem, and then application can be hosted on public cloud. So this is how a hybrid cloud can be made sure that the infrastructure has been maintained that way. But in terms of the vendor dependency, with multi cloud we can always have multiple vendors, can be like multiple providers can be worked with, not depending on individual cloud provider. But with respect to hybrid cloud, we will have only one cloud provider along the side of on premises. So we will not have multiple cloud providers. I am not sure why the screen is stuck. Can you see my screen now? Yes, so yeah, this is a difference between hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. So there is one more thing what we have to understand is the use case example. So there is a company which can use AWS for AI workloads and GCP for data analytics. What I have earlier mentioned was, so any organization which has adopted multi-cloud approach can make sure it host all the AI workloads on AWS and the GCP for data analytics, or it can be AWS and Azure, or it can be GCP and Azure too. But hybrid cloud, for example, a banking application can store its sensitive data on premises while running customer facing applications on public cloud. So this is how it makes sure that the sensitive data or the all the customer related data can be made sure it is secure. But there is advantages of using multi-cloud architecture. What is that? Is like it can avoid vendor lock-in. What is vendor lock-in is we don't have to just depend on a single provider. Like when we go for a multiple cloud platforms, we don't have to just depend on one provider and then get stuck with that provider. And but when we have a multi-cloud approach, we will be able to always move across any cloud providers. So this is how it will be very much easy, or any it will be a flexible way of approach too. And it will it will have regulatory compliance and then data residency, so we can always distribute the data across multiple regions to meet legal requirement. But when it comes to on premises, it is like a little restricted to have a data across multiple regions. But with respect to cloud provider or a cloud platform, we will have a flexibility of distributing data across all these multiple regions. So yes, the next will be cost optimization. So what is cost optimization is like when we go with the cloud provider, so we will be able to understand like, or to have a services, what services I need for this architecture, or how much I can utilize, and I can make sure that I will not overutilize and then make a huge cost to the company. So I will be able to make sure that I have a optimized cost with respect to the services used by any cloud providers in my architecture. So here, as I have already told, the Netflix is a real world use case example which has adopted multiple cloud approach by using AWS and Azure. How is AWS for global content delivery and Azure for internal business operations? So this is a best example where you can just see how Netflix has been made sure that it has used multi-cloud architecture, and the resilience, scalability, and disaster recovery has been enhanced and improved. So this multi-cloud architecture approach is best when you look into Netflix. It is never having a downtime. So if it is down at one provider level, it can always make sure that is up by another cloud provider. So this is how Netflix has been made sure that it has distributed its workloads across multiple cloud. So next, when I mentioned about multi-cloud, so for example, my organization level, if I have a hybrid cloud architecture, now I want to move to multi-cloud architecture. What all the key points I have to keep in mind and then start the architecture at design level. So the design principles include few of the key points, which will be the first will be interoperability. What is interoperability? As in like there will be multiple services from these multiple cloud providers like AWS, Azure, and GCP. But here, all the services from these cloud providers has to communicate and function together efficiently. And when we talk about infrastructure level for any kind of a cloud agnostic applications, we should make sure that we use APIs, Kubernetes, and containerization to create these applications. So the best examples to always have a real use case can be made with like Terraform, which will give us a seamless automation with cloud providers, and the Kubernetes can be used for hosting our applications as a cluster level on these cloud providers too. So the next will be security and identity management. When we talk about security at cloud provider level, it is giving us a different services to make sure that we are secure at all the levels. So which will be like implementing single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and all these cloud providers will have uh, services for encrypting our data, which will be like AWS KMS or GCP cloud KMS, or at Azure level or any other cloud provider level. We do have these encryption services which will make sure that we will have a extra layers security at our data perspective. Next will be data management and storage. How? So when I talk about hybrid cloud, it was like the applications were hosted on a public cloud and the data was still on-prem. How to avoid this? So these cloud providers has been given by these services for databases like AWS has RDS and GCP has Cloud SQL, and then Azure also has SQL. So this is how we can always have a database for our applications which can be hosted directly on these services. And there is an object storage application. So we can always mirror across these all the cloud providers, which will be AWS S3, Azure Blob Storage, and Google Cloud Storage. So these are the object storage applications. So we can always communicate across these services with all these cloud providers. So there is an example. So in we can always integrate any of the open source tools with these cloud providers. Like it's not just having a restriction that we can just use these cloud provider services only. So there is always a freedom to integrate any of the any of the open source tools can be integrated with these cloud providers. For example, Snowflake or BigQuery or any other, like as I mentioned, Terraform, Kubernetes, HashiCorp World. So all these services can be done. So the next will be networking and connectivity. So if there is an efficient network, then it is always made sure that there is a minimized latency and enable a smooth data transfer between these cloud providers. So we always have to make sure there is an efficient network available at our architecture. For that, we need these services provided by these cloud providers, which will be AWS Transit Gateway, Google Cloud Interconnect, and Azure Express Route. So these are the key points to make sure we have a better architecture for multi-cloud before we just want to move to multi-cloud architecture. So there will be always any other services to look into. These are just an example what we are talking here, just to understand what are the benefits of having a multi-cloud architecture instead of hybrid cloud architecture. So you can always go into these cloud providers and then learn on the services level, and then make sure that you always have a better understanding what services reaches to what kind of a function. So there is another use case, like it's a real world use case, will be Spotify. So it has always, sorry, it also has a multi-cloud approach with respect to AI or ML workloads and data processing. For AI and ML workloads, it has been using GCP for any kind of algorithms or personalization for AI driven operations. But when it comes to data processing, it has been hosted. Everything, data storage or data processing or any backend services can be managed by AWS. So this is again a AWS and a GCP cloud approach. So multi-cloud approach. So you can go for this Spotify official website to look into what they have, what design, and then their architecture at backend level. And I have already discussed about complex challenges in multi-cloud. So there is a always challenges we come with any kind of a newer technologies to adopt into. So similar way, we have few of the challenges with respect to multi-cloud approach. What is that is like there will be a complexity in management. When we talk about multiple cloud platforms, there will be having a different process, different services, different way of operating in each of their providers. So there is always complexity in learning and then adopting, since it has a different unique tools and interfaces. So we have to learn from each of the cloud providers perspective and then make sure that it has been adopted into our day-to-day operations. And there will be a security risk. So managing security across multiple cloud providers is a little bit tricky. Instead of having only one cloud provider, so still when we go with the best practices to adopt these changes, we can make sure that there is we can make sure that we will avoid these challenges. So again, data transfer. So data transfer is a huge work, to do in any kind of organization, from one cloud to another cloud provider, or from on-prem to cloud. This is a huge cost efficient work, but still when we go with a best practice, which will discuss in the next part, will be will make sure that the challenges have been avoided. And the last one is like compliance and the governance. So for whatever the cloud providers, we will have a few of the industry standards to meet the compliance and then governance. So for each of the cloud providers, we will always have to uh, make sure that we will be completing their compliance, their respective compliance and then governance, and then adopt into our architecture. So these are the common challenges with respect to multi-cloud approach. Now let us discuss the best practices. So I hope this is all clear till now. So now let us discuss about the best practices. So by using multi-cloud approach, it is not just a cloud providers. We always have to work with the open source tools or any third party tools. So make sure that we are reducing the cost, and we are making sure that our application are not going beyond the cost that we have been given. So by using any of the management tools, for example, Kubernetes, Terraform, HashiCorp Vault. So these are all the open source tools which we can adopt with our cloud providers, and make sure that we won't get into any kind of a challenges with respect to portability, or any with respect to any kind of automation, or any kind of data which has to be encrypted. When it has been maintained in vault, it will make sure that it is not being interrupted. And the next will be, instead of maintaining the security at each of the cloud providers level, we will always have a freedom to implement a centralized identity management, which can be AWS IAM and Azure AD or GCP level also. It is always best to make sure we will implement a centralized identity management. And then with respect to cost, for all the multiple cloud providers, when we monitor our services, what we are using at AWS level and the Azure level, uh, we can just make sure that these services are only used to make sure my application is up and it is having no downtime with any latency issues. So that is how, when we monitor and optimize our services, what we use from each of the cloud platforms, so we can just have a cost reduced, and then make sure that we are not overly utilizing the services from these cloud platforms. So it is always best to have a financial operation strategies maintained in our architecture. So by going with these best practices, we can make sure that we won't get into any challenges with respect to the multi-cloud approach in our architecture. So yes, the next one will be again one more use case, Airbnb. So as I already mentioned, Airbnb has earlier provider, which again it has decided a year after it has been launched that they are going to migrate all the cloud computing functions to AWS because of the services, some of the service challenges what they have experienced with the earlier provider. So what they have achieved after moving to AWS, it is not just about AWS. They have the all the workloads distributed among AWS and GCP. So now it has a better and enhanced resilience in terms of the functionalities, and it has reduced the cost as well across the the whole application. So by using multi cloud providers, it has reduced the cost as well, and now it is having a better flexibility and then scalability at user level demand. So there will be always demands from user side, they need some of the modifications, or they need some of the things which can be enhanced and worked into or looked into, right? So now Airbnb has a better flexibility to adopt any changes or any modifications, and it can scale very drastically, and then these strategies work very well for these use case. So you can again go into their official website and then look into what they have made sure that these are all achieved. So I think you will have a better understanding at their Airbnb level, so their architecture and their backend services, how they have utilized. So the next part will be, what are the trends in this multi-cloud? So there will be always, we will get to do AI and automation in multi-cloud management. Like we can make sure we will do some of the automation in terms of AWS and Azure at one level only. So there will be good utilization with what we have. So automation can be a common or a centralized automation service which we can use for the multiple cloud providers. And there will be a serverless multi-cloud, so there won't be any kind of latency or any issues what we face and we have to look into manually. So there will be always serverless multi-cloud trends will be all the time, market will be showing that. So there will be a security enhancement. Instead of having a hybrid cloud with there will be a security balance but with restricted level. But here we have a security enhancement. As I mentioned already, there will be SSO, and there will be MFA, and we have a KMS, and in these things to make sure that data has been encrypted, and this there is a multiple layers of security enhancement. And also there is edge computing. Instead of just having the services being used and then made sure that we have deployed our applications on cloud providers, there is also edge computing also available with this approach. Yes. So this has been about all the multi-cloud approach, how it has been, made sure with the real world use case examples, and then how we can adopt these approaches in our architecture. So what we have for the next 5 years at least. So there is a increased adoption of these cloud native services so far. Like when we look at the progress from hybrid cloud approach, every organization is moving into multi-cloud approach nowadays. So there is a drastic increase in adoption of these multi-cloud approach, and more cross cloud integrations between major providers. As I mentioned, there is a major providers has been like AWS and Azure and GCP and other cloud providers has been adopted by organization, and there is a huge integrations between these providers. So there is a rise of industry specific multi cloud solutions. There is when you look at the organization level, so there is a huge rise of industry specific multi cloud solutions. I mean, when you look at the drastic change from hybrid cloud to multi cloud. So this is all the slides what I have shown is about multi-cloud, how it can be earlier, how it was, and how now it can be adopted into our architecture. So if I have to show you any kind of just how AWS portal looks, or how Azure portal looks and everything, I will be able to show you a small just a demo how you can just create a resource in Azure cloud platform and in AWS cloud platform. So apart from these things, I have next slide will be question. So what are the key advantage of multiple cloud strategies? Anybody can answer in the chat box. I hope you can see my screen. The question will be, what is the key advantage of multi-cloud strategy? Anybody else? Yes, yes, sorry. I can see the answer as B. Anybody else can go? Anybody else can try to answer this question? Yes, it will be Terraform. So the next question is, what is the common challenge in multi-cloud adoption? C. Okay. Yes, you are right. So the last question will be, what is an example of multi-cloud management tool? Right. So it will be B. It is HashiCorp Vault. So yes, I think the last question can be, what describes serverless apps on multiple clouds? C. Okay. B. Anybody else can go? Last question. So it will be serverless multi-cloud. Yes. So what all we have discussed today will be about multi-cloud improves resilience, cost optimization, and flexibility. So this is how we have, uh, made sure to understand what multiple cloud approach does. So it will improve resilience and cost optimization and the flexibility. So we have also seen real world use cases from Netflix, Spotify, and Airbnb. And there won't be any practical demo of deploying any application since we are running out of a time. So if you people really want me to show, I can just show how you can create resources on AWS and Azure, and how you will integrate both of them, have a communication between both of these services hosted on Azure and AWS. Please let me know if I have to show that. I mean, I'm very much free to show these things. Yes. Yeah, hi Shijin. There won't be a demo, so I'm just showing you about how you can just create the resources on. So this will be a AWS console. When you go to here EC2 instance, this will be having all the what all the services provided by AWS has been here. So you can always go for all the applications, all the services and everything. Here I'm in EC2 console. I hope you can see this. Let me know if you can. Yes, okay. So this is a AWS console. So I'll just explain what we are doing as a demo. So we will be creating a resource as like we will be creating a server like instance at AWS level with so and so configuration. So when we try to create any kind of a instance here, so we will have to have certain configurations given here, so which will be name of my server, what will be my instance name, instance as in server. So I can give my example like my web server. Here I can choose which image can be choose to create my server, and the AMI. It is all like a since I'm it is just a free tier available, I'm just using it. So the next one will be, just a second. So the next one will be instance type. So here it is just a t2.micro, and there will be a key pair. We can create a new key pair here and then use it. And there will be a network configurations we can add. There will be a subnet, VPC, and we can restrict what are the traffic we are going to allow into this server, and where we are going to connect to this and everything. So based on that we can create this resource which is like instance here in the AWS level. And the next will be at Azure level. We are gonna create database. So my server, AWS server, will have the application. Like once we create this web server, we will install so and so web server application onto, and then we will keep the database at Azure level. So the database will be maintained at Azure and the server will be maintained at AWS side. So here, let us try to create a database at Azure level. Here, same, when I'm in my home, I can just come to SQL database. So you can just search SQL database and you can come to this console. And here you can just name your database, what you have, what to name, MyDB. And here you can select the subscription and the resource group. If the resource group is not present, you can create a new resource group and then give a database name mydb. Here if you already have a server, you can select one. If you don't have, you can create a new one. And then the similar way you can set up networking as well and then create this SQL database. So after this what we will do is, so it is just an example I'm showing you, as like I have not created a resources yet, but what I am telling you, like we can make these two services communicate with each other. How? Once we create this database at Azure level also, what we will do is we will allow the EC2 instance what we created, right? So we will make sure then the configuration of networking, we will allow AWS from Azure. So the Azure portal can access my AWS account. So how we are going to allow that? When we create, I'll just show you how you can just I think you can hear me still. So, when we come to Azure portal in the SQL servers, what I have just shown you that here while creating this database, there is a server. So when we create this server here, right? So I don't have permission now, so that's why I'm not creating. But when we create this server, right? So at this server level, we can give the AWS instance public IP and then allow that. So when we make that configuration, now my server like SQL server can access to EC2 instance. And the same way, now we will make that what SQL database I have created, there also under the connection strings, under settings, we will copy my server name with the username and password. From here I can connect to my instance. When I open my instance, from here I can connect to my database. So this is how I will make sure that I am able to connect from my EC2 instance to Azure SQL database. So this is how the multi-cloud providers can communicate, or both of the services can communicate with each other. So this is a small example I just gave how you can make sure that these services are able to communicate with each other, and I can still able to make my server up. You can still able to access your server which is hosted on EC2, but the server level database has been hosted on Azure portal. So I hope this is clear. Yes, thank you, Anusha. Unfortunately, you couldn't show the demo completely. So, yes, I am very much happy to hear that it is clear. So, if you have any questions, can you just ping over the chat here? I can take over. Or if you have any feedback or any questions or anything to tell about. Yes. So, how they communicate. So, for example, I have told that EC2 instance is at AWS level. So, when you want to yes, so EC2 instance is at AWS level where I have I have installed some web server on this EC2 instance. But the database side, data for this server has been hosted on Azure. So when we want to have a connection between these two, what we will do is we will make sure the EC2 instance public IP has been configured at Azure database level. So when we do this, when we allow this connection, we can my EC2 instance server can access the database from Azure. So this is how both can communicate. Okay, great. Anything else? Anything else, guys? Or how was the session? All this fun. Can you explain AI in it? So this session is actually about the multi-cloud only. So I mean about AWS, Azure, and GCP. But I can, I mean, I can just guide you like how you can, check about AI in AWS. So AI, and like we have few of the services available on AWS with respect to AI tools. So I think you can just go ahead and then check on the AI services available in AWS. So I think I have missed a question from Ashutosh, that importance of AWS in nowadays. I think AWS is playing major role nowadays with this, in all the cloud providers, since all the cloud providers are uh, having a equal contribution towards the services what they are providing us. So AWS is also at the major or a huge uh, cloud provider, and it is a big one. I mean, it is having a big or a huge demand nowadays. I think the important is at a top level. So we will be able to I think I just recommend Ashutosh that you can just learn about AWS in depth to know the services and the tools they are provided so far. So anything else? So yeah, I think if everything is clear, so let us end the session then. Thank you all for joining the session. It was last moment. Thank you so much. I hope the points and then the content has been delivered you, and then you're all clear. Have a great day, all of you. Bye.